There's miracles happening. There's anti-miracles happening. So there's a lot that I took from those first weeks. A lot of things that I took with me, my relationship with Hashem. And I really did feel like God was with me in Gaza, but I was also really pissed at her at the same time because these were good people and these good people were without heads and these good people were completely burnt. Many of these good people were raped. And for the longest time, I was upset at God. You were here. I felt you in Gaza. I felt you down south. So aren't good people supposed to be saved? I always learned that good people get saved, right? You do the right thing, you do the good thing, and then you have a miracle and then you get saved. And I realized within my processing that I wasn't mad at Hashem. I was mad at what I was told about Hashem. I was told all these stories of the people who got saved because they did the right thing.
This is Listening to Understand, where sensitive Jewish truth seekers gather in a safe place for candid conversations on challenging topics. When we listen to truly understand and not in order to respond, we can replace judgment with curiosity and open our hearts to every Jew, regardless of their personal choices. As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. I'm Atana. Let's get started. Today I sit down with Arky Staiman. A lot of you know him, the voice of optimism from Instagram, going around viral during the war in Israel. He is that soldier with the smile, the soldier that gave permission for people to live alive while not forgetting our loved ones in Israel, giving guidance and motivation to focus on the right thing. He's going to share with us what was Arky before, what was Arky during, and what is Arky next? What is his next mission in life? He's going to be coming on a speaking tour to America in South Florida, Miami, Hollywood, Boca, New Jersey, Baltimore, Teaneck, Long Island. Follow him on Instagram. We're going to drop a link below. This episode was one of my most heartwarming episodes, an honor to speak to such a kadosh. He taught me about parenting and emunah, the permission to be human, all parts of it. I highly recommend you listen. He went on a mission to Gaza and to other places during the war. He put his life on the line, literally. Can you share his story that his wisdom should inspire others for the future? And we should learn from what he is gifting us in this episode. Share it. The end of this episode is very important because we deep dive into what's next and how do we do next. There's going to be parts of this episode that's gory and maybe even hard to listen. When we give that warning, take a moment and ask yourself, can I hear hard details about the war in Israel? Please give us a rating and reviews. Apple, Spotify, share. If you're on Spotify, it'll take you less than 10 seconds, but it will help us tremendously. Thank you for your help. Enjoy this conversation. Wonderful Arky, the claim to fame Arky, the sound, the voice, the smile, the inspiration, all the way from Israel, the voices, the videos that we were looking forward to. I'm actually sitting down now and speaking to Arky about his experience in the war. I want to thank him for being my inspiration during the war and looking forward to Arky's videos of saying, you know what, we got this. And I just said to you before, the permission to be human, because sometimes we struggle with, are we allowed to be happy? Are we allowed to be grateful? Are we allowed to see what's working? And Arky gave me permission for that. So Arky, first of all, thank you for being here.
Of course, I'm so happy to be here. And it's always so nice to hear the effects that I had on people. I'm only out of the army about a month. So the amount of people who have come and said to me, you changed my outlook on the war is a lot, but it's only been about a few weeks where I'm hearing people really express how that's helped them. And so it's really wonderful to hear.
Yeah. So for people that don't know who you are, Arky is going to give us a little bit of a background, where he grew up, why is his English so well, and why is he in the army? His decision to go to the army, what was his reality in the army, but what gift did he give us besides protecting us or besides the service that he did in the army? And we're going to hear about the service that he did. How does everybody know Arky? How did it become a buzzword during the war? So Arky, before you give me the history of your army, just give people the idea of who Arky was on Instagram.
So what I tried to do, and this already started within the first few days of the war, I realized that everybody was sitting at home in America or outside of Israel, and the Jewish world especially, just scrolling through devastating news stories after depressing world reactions, after gory videos. And it was just like so much deep, paralyzing. People were telling me they were in like a coma of depression. And I look around in the army as a soldier who was called up, and the soldiers aren't like that. And I look around in the streets of Israel, there's barbecues and parties going on, and the morale is so high. I'm like, wait a second. Is there a way we can try and bring this attitude of there's something you can do for the Jewish people and for the army and for the soldiers, and that would bring you out of this like comatose depression and give you some sort of purpose. So what I did is I just started making videos of, I'm about to go down to a mission. I want you guys to do something good. I want you to tell a joke. I want you to make somebody smile, be the reason somebody smiled today. And those kind of videos, people, like you said, the permission to be okay, the permission to be happy, and also give people their mission of maybe sent gear and maybe I've prayed. What do I do now? What can I do with myself? How can I help? And I was giving people these little missions of maybe play with your kids a little bit more this week because I'm not going to be going to, or dance more on Kabbalat Shabbat because we're probably not going to be doing a Kabbalat Shabbat I like to do, which is fun and simcha and dancing. So I was like, that's on you. And I was really saying that out of the bottom of my heart. This gives you an opportunity to fill in the lack that I'm having and so many of the soldiers are having by fighting this war. And you're like, our home front support.
So, Arky, the first thing that I did when I saw your video, the first video that went viral before Shabbat, was this like, wow, I can be grateful out loud. Like I'm allowed to, because my gratitude is what I do, what I tap into in order to survive hard times. It's my oxygen. But at the same time, I live in America. My kids are not in the front line. My brothers are not in the front line. My family, I shouldn't say, my Am Yisrael brothers are, but not my DNA brothers. Is it insensitive? In the heart, you can be grateful and you can say, wow, I get to shower in my shower. I get to sleep in my bed. I get to eat a Shabbat meal with my family. And at the same time, somebody is protecting our nations in Israel. But what is the imo anochi b'tzara? How do we have the balance of they're not showering in a shower. They're not sleeping in a normal bed. They're getting woken up. They're either wet or boiling, starving or exhausted, confused, not getting to speak to their family, not having the privileges that we do. But at the same time, we have to be sensitive to those that don't have. So how do we coexist with that?
Right. So I think I'll answer your question with a question, which is, why are these soldiers doing these things? Why are we sleeping on the ground in the rain, putting our lives online? Are we doing it so that you can sit at home and be sad for us and be sorry and not live your life and stop celebrating Shabbat and Yamim Tovim and holidays the way that we did before? Or are we doing that so that so that the rest of the Jewish people can continue being okay, being besimcha? We are taking the brunt so that you guys can live your lives not in fear of a terrorist attack, not in fear and not scared and not anxious. So if you're going to live anxious, scared, depressed, comatose, that's the opposite of what we're going for as soldiers. And we don't do that. As soldiers, we're not sitting there depressed and sad. We're joking around. And so the question isn't, is it insensitive? The question is, what do we need?
Is it helpful?
Is it helpful? Right now, we don't need more depression and upsetness. And you might think that it comes from a place of sensitivity, but I think it comes from more of a place of lack of understanding what the Jewish people need at the time. And that's where I was coming from. I was saying there's an imbalance. You're talking about this balance between imo anochi b'tzara, right? We want to be with the struggles, but I think we were so far to that end that we lost ourselves. Can we even be joyous on Shabbat? Can we have festive meals? Yes, that's why soldiers are there. Even now, I got up right before Purim and I was like, how are we going to celebrate Purim this year? There's hostages still in Gaza. We're still fighting this fight. Soldiers haven't slept in a long time. They stink, not showering. I said, if you were to ask those soldiers, or if somehow you could ask those hostages, whether they want us to be celebrating Purim double or half the joy, they'd be saying double. I can promise.
Really?
That's what
do you think
want.
it's a united, you think that you are the voice of the frontliners?
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm the voice, but I can tell you from my personal experience, there's no soldier that I had any contact with that wanted people to be more somber outside of Gaza because they're inside of Gaza, because they're fighting. It's usually the opposite. We want you to be day to day. Don't forget that it's happening, right?
That's the thing, Arky.
Mm-hmm.
This is my question. This is, I think you touched on it. Don't forget.
Well, that's
remember, don't forget.
Right. So that's why I'm saying, don't do Kabbalat Shabbat regular. Do it double. That's your way of not forgetting, right? Don't do Purim half or the same. Do it double, meaning change something, but it doesn't have to be changing something to we're not going to do it as well, or we're going to do it less, or we're going to do it with a more somber attitude. This is not Tisha B'Av. And it might feel like it. And there are times where it really does gut punch and we feel it. And there's room for that also. But I think for the most of us, we've all felt the gut punches. We've all felt the sadness. And now it's just a question of how do we remember without getting sucked?
How do we remember without getting sucked in? And yes. And one of the things that I kept on hearing from Neshot Chayalim and mothers of those that sent to the army, the fear that people from abroad will forget. In the beginning, there was this social desire to be a part of something greater, and we're going to do it together. We're going to send the suitcases. We're going to do the fundraising. This one's going to do the beef jerky. This one's going to do the barbecues, like biyachad.
Yeah.
And then life catches up, and then you feel like, oh, wait, they're going back to life. They're going to their 9-to-5 job. They don't see in Israel the sirens. They don't see in Israel what's really going on. So how do we remember when it's not in front of our eyes?
It's tough.
When we don't have somebody in the army that we miss. Yeah. That's the fear, Arky.
It's tough. I know. I understand that fear, which is why I'm not coming to say ignore the fact that there's something going on in Israel. I'm saying channel these feelings about what's going on in Israel to something positive. Don't forget about it. Just channel it. And that's hard. It's not easy. And it's not always going to work. And it's not going to be every day. And there's plenty. I give tours of the South where we go down and see all the terrible things. And it's not fun and it's not exciting and it's sad. It's depressing. So I'm the first one who understands how intense it can be, which is why I think I also realize how much we need to channel it for good. Otherwise, what are we getting? What do you get out of adding to the fear, anxiety, and sadness?
I think I got clarity now. I think I understand what you're saying. I think you're saying is being depressed is not going to help us. So up the simcha, do everything that you do as a Yehudi on the highest vibration. And at the same time, do something different in order to help whatever it is. Don't go back to your regular day, only besimcha. Take the besimcha, and also it should be, and never forget.
Yes.
But don't think that by being depressed, you're helping us, because you're not.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. I got it, Arky. Okay. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Because for me as somebody, and I remember in the first few months, we used to say to our children, and I don't know if it was the right or wrong thing. I really don't know. But like, there are hostages. People are dying on the front line. People are not at home. People didn't see their children. And you're going to go play bowling, and you're going to go on vacation, and you're going to go play golf, and you're going to have a life, and you're going to like all these, like, you're not allowed to. And it was a very hard balance. And I still have a hard time. With what, it sounds ridiculous that I'm even bringing it up, because it's embarrassing. I'm going to say I'm embarrassed to even bring it up. But when winter break came, I'm like, how can we even think about winter break? Shouldn't we take a family time during winter break? Not to be sad, but let's do something towards Israel in this time off.
That's also great. But there's a big difference between I can't take a vacation or be happy or go bowling because there's a war in Israel versus what can I do to help Israel during my time off? What can I do, I don't know, during bowling? Can I do a fundraiser? I mean, those two things go in hand to hand.
It's
right?
an and.
Yeah. You can have fun, enjoy your life, take vacations, as well as do things for Israel.
Yeah. And I think that in the Sheshet HaSchirot, there's one schira that says, Zachor al tishkach. And I want to say that it's similar to here. It's not enough to not forget. You have to zachor. You have to constantly remember and think about the people in Israel. Even the people that don't have people on the front line, just people that are going through a very hard time.
Yeah.
So there's a both sides. So remember that you're a Jew, and al tishkach, and don't forget them.
Sure. And have your radar out for when you see somebody who's imbalanced, who maybe is forgetting too much, or is maybe not forgetting too much, is too involved. You have the radar out of what does that person need right now, and how can I bring him back more towards them? Because I think you see people all the time that are way too obsessed and get out of it, and it's not healthy of what's going on in Israel. And then you see people who have completely forgotten, and you want to help them try and find that middle as well as yourself.
Okay, Arky, now give us some history.
Yes.
Why do you have such a good English and you're in the IDF?
So I grew up in Baltimore, and already at age 13 for my bar mitzvah, I mentioned something to my parents about maybe wanting to do my bar mitzvah in Israel. And they were like, okay, let's do it. And I didn't have anything in America, a laning, not a party, nothing. And I flew for 2 weeks to Israel, did all the regular bar mitzvah stuff, Masada and Getty, had amazing tour guides, and fell in love.
Was that the first time you were there?
First time I was ever in Israel. The second time I was in Israel was for a month to Israel that cost a lot of money to go to Israel. And my parents said, no problem. You want to go? You don't have to pay for it yourself. So I started a Pesach car cleaning business, made $5,000 as a 15-year-old, and paid for my way to get to an Israel trip and be on a bus where we went to Prague. It was also Prague and Israel. So it's like from the Holocaust, and my grandfather was from Prague. So it was very emotional for me, to Israel. And it was clearly a good decision because there was a girl on my bus who I eventually married.
Abigail?
I was on that trip with me. We never dated back then, but that was where essentially where we got to know each other. That continued my love for Israel. And I had an off Shabbat where I asked my madrich, my counselor, can I go somewhere interesting? And they sent me to Hebron where nobody was speaking any English and I didn't know any Hebrew. And I was just having the time of my life in a total Israeli environment. I'll give you a story, like an only in Israel story. We're walking on Friday night towards Kabbalat Shabbat in Marat HaMachpelah. And I hope it's okay, all the Hebrew. And on our way down, it's just the men. They go down these stairs into a cave and they all just start taking off their clothes. And I'm like, okay, what's happening here? And they go deep into this cave where there's a natural pool where they're all dipping in the mikvah before going to shul on Friday night. Like no towels, no nothing. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I want to be a part of this. And I joined in, and it was like, it just changed everything. That Shabbat, that trip. And I was like the kid in Friday night davening in America that was wearing like sandals and pants. And people were like, you're so Israeli. So it never really, as a 15, 16, 17-year-old, never really surprised anybody that I was coming to Israel, that I wanted to do the army. On these trips, I saw soldiers, and one of them gave me a little pocket Tehillim, and I kept it with me. Like I davened with it on Friday nights, and it was just always a part of who I was as a teenager. And I used that passion. And already by 12th grade, I didn't even apply to college in America because I knew I was going to the army. I didn't know how, I didn't know where, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wanted to be a soldier. It was like no question.
And your parents supported that decision?
My parents were 100% supportive in that decision. My parents have been supportive in a childhood of mine that was not always easy. I grew up actually in a yeshivish background, in a yeshivish world, in a school that did not know how to handle this amount of ADHD and learning disabilities. And I wasn't fitting in. And they were able to see that even though it meant sending me to a more modern school or even to a non-Jewish school, I needed something different. I needed something that would work for me. And that was like a common theme that just happens throughout my childhood and still happening to today, is that my parents are supportive of what I need and who I need to be, even if it's not what they always thought it was going to be.
Do they give parenting classes?
They should.
Oh
Anytime my parents...
Oh my God. I hear these stories and I'm like, these are giants. These are lamedvavnikim.
Very special people. And anytime somebody's talking to me about their children with ADHD, I said, you really need to talk to my parents because they did a great job.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Is a bracha.
No
So
lies.
you moved to Israel at 18?
I moved to Israel and I did the year in yeshiva thing, which was nice, but I really wanted to be Israeli. So I joined. Exactly. So I joined a Hesder yeshiva, which is a 5-year program, 1.5 years of yeshiva, 2 years of army, and then another 1.5 years of yeshiva. So it's a 5-year program. And totally Israeli yeshiva, learned Hebrew quite quickly because nobody was speaking in English. And already in my 2nd year in Israel, I joined the paratrooper unit. I wanted to be at Staiman. I wanted to try out for the best units that I could get into. And highly motivated. They gave me this weapon, the Negev, because they saw that I was just like really, I was the kid coming in with the highest motivation. No matter what, I'll do anything you need from me. Little by little, I wore down, but so that was my service. And I actually ended up serving in Hebron, guarding the places that I went for Shabbat, that Shabbat when I was 15 years old. And I remember seeing those soldiers there and I ended up being a soldier there. It was really where I was meant to be and how I was meant to.
Did you always feel home when you were at the army? There's this dream, this fantasy, and then you get there and then you're like, wait, it's not like what I thought. What was the difference between your chazon and the reality?
There was a big difference. I guess I underestimated how much of I don't really fit in a box. I don't really follow rules. I don't draw in the lines. Let's put it that way. My father calls it thinking outside the brain. So exactly. So that kind of aspect doesn't really work with an army that wants you to be tucked in all the time and shoes shined all the time and made all the time and organized. And so I took what I took from the army and I was as good of a soldier as I possibly could. But my ulfi, my personality, my inner self, it's not a chayal mentality. It's not you told me what to do and I'll do it. Yes, sir. I'm in my professional life. I'm an atzmai. I'm a freelancer. I never liked having a boss. So those two things really collided.
What happened? And how did you get through it?
I just ended up being the guy who was always with his shirt tucked out. And when the commander went up to me, he's like, Arky, why isn't your gun properly? Da, 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 da. Like, I always did things that I needed to do when it came to the actual toughness of fighting and combat and training. I was all in. But when it came to the shtuyot, as they say, when it came to the discipline, it just wasn't for me.
But were you able to get away with it? Because they say in the army, you can't really. The mefaked is the mefaked.
I didn't get away with it. And it was always a joke with my comrades. Like, here we go. Arky's again getting in trouble. Okay. But you know what? That's what it comes along with it. That as a soldier, there's no personal identity. You have to do what you're told. And it's just not about you.
Taking a break for a few seconds to give you a quick announcement. If you haven't joined our Listening to Understand WhatsApp community, please do so now. There's a link in the show notes. We're going to be sharing more exciting stuff only for the members of the Listening to Understand WhatsApp community. See you there. I'm curious, in terms of somebody that grew up Haredi, did you have any expectations or you didn't really care? You're like, I don't really care about the Orthodox part. I care about being the soldier in Israel, doing the right thing. And if I continue being Orthodox, that's fine. And if not.
Right. So I was already after 2.5 years of yeshiva. I was definitely not Haredi at that point, definitely not yeshivish at that point. I had paved my own path and it was clear that I was going to do my own thing religiously. But 2.5 years of yeshiva is about strengthening that emunah, strengthening your ability to say, if I go on a long march, a walk with heavy packs for 12 hours and I come back sunrise and everybody takes their stuff off and wants to just go to sleep, I have to be the guy that puts on tefillin and says shachri, even though everybody's going to sleep. And it's a very personal thing of, are you strong enough? It's not the army's doing it to you. It's, are you strong enough to keep up what you believe in? And that's the same post-army in a job and with kids. And it's really just real life, let's be honest. And
very true.
I don't buy the whole people lose their faith in the army or lose their faith in Hashem in the army or lose their religiosity in the army. If you lost your religiosity in the army, then you just weren't ready for real.
That's exactly what JJ Kimchi said. That's exactly. He said, if you lose it, it's because your Jewish foundation wasn't strong enough for the temptation.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow. Were you the only Orthodox one or not?
No, I was in a unit that's mixed yeshiva guys as well as seculars. So it's like a real Am Yisrael, everybody. So if I wanted a minyan, I could have it. And if I wanted to sleep through Shachrit, I could do that too. That's on you. It's really interesting in the army. When you're mixed, secular and religious, it's the secular people who are looking at and saying, wait, last week when we were cleaning the barracks, you were in shul davening. And now you're sleeping through davening. So which one is it, Arky? Are you actually dedicated or are you just using it to get out of your responsibility? And it was the secular people opening their eyes at you and looking at you and seeing if you're actually dedicated, if you're actually who you say you are. And that's the best.
You versus you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And I feel like kids do that to us as parents when it comes like they see hypocrisies and they're like, wait, which one is it? When it's convenient for you, you're at shul. When it's not convenient for you, you find excuses why. And it really holds up a mirror to us to say, okay, let's, and it strengthens your point that it's you versus you.
Exactly. So I want to move on from my mandatory service because that was like another world ago. That was literally
How many years ago?
I entered the army in March 2011 and was done in 2013. So that was over a decade ago.
Okay.
I got called up a few years later for my first reserve training duty. I didn't know what I was doing. I arrived, and as soon as we get there, they start explaining to us that we are in the unit that is search and rescue for fallen soldiers. Our job is to go into battlefields and make sure that any soldier that's, God forbid, is killed or soldiers make their way back to Israel and for a proper Jewish burial. And at first I'm like, it's not doing what?
Wow.
I didn't know or have any training now. What are you talking about? And it took me a few years to really come to grips with the fact that this is now my job in the army, is to deal with bodies and searching and body parts and all the things that could potentially be in a battlefield, in a war, risking your life, going under fire, but not to fight, rather to collect. And then it dawned on me, / my dad wrote an article about it, how my grandmother was in a small Jewish community in Binghamton, New York, was the person who was in charge of the cover Kadisha of the community of New York. She dealt with any of the women who passed away. That was her job. And my grandfather on the other side was a Holocaust survivor. And in Auschwitz, his job was he was the Sonderkommando. He was forced by the Nazis to deal with the remains of the Jewish people who were killed.
Wait, you didn't know this before?
I think I knew of it. It never clicked. And I'm thinking to myself, like, and my father writes about this in an article about the way they're looking down on me, right? My grandfather in Auschwitz, who was forced by the Nazis to deal with human remains. His grandson is going into Gaza to give the last respect to the holiest soldiers who just gave their life for Israel. So for years, we trained about a week a year, 2 weeks a year. We trained removing from burning tanks. We trained from removing and trying to find soldiers under wreckages and under destroyed buildings. There's training. You need to actually learn how to do it. It's not just come grab. And,
but you're training not during war. So it's
with 100% knowledge that we will never actually have. That's what everybody felt. This is just for training. It's not actually going to be. We're going to be ready just in case, but we're not actually this, right?
So how many years did you do training for this?
10 years.
10 years?
10 years.
Every time you were called for Miluim, this is what you did?
Yeah, this is my job. And it will be till the end of my Miluim, until my end of my reserve unit. This is what I do. Yeah.
Wow. 10 years you're practicing.
And again,
Simchat Torah.
this is not going to happen. And then
right.
Simchat Torah comes. And I'm not sure how much you're going to hear of my wife's story. Is that going to be played before this, after?
You'll decide what makes sense.
So you might hear also the side of the story for my wife, but during the hakafot with my children, I start hearing the booms going on in shul, and they tell us where to go for the bomb shelter, and the rumors are going around about southern Israel, and keep on telling everybody my job is only when it gets really bad. So as long as I'm here, it can't be that bad. Kept on telling people that. Just maybe in retrospect, the best idea to say to everybody. And then I got the call and gave my wife and kid a hug and made my way out to the base. The adrenaline rushing, not knowing, am I going just to my base just to go back home? Am I going into war for the next month? When am I going to see my family? No idea. Literally no idea. Already that night, we had gotten our gear and we were on our way down to Kfar Aza, which was one of the worst hit kibbutzim that still was controlled by Hamas at the time. There were still terrorists swarming that area, and we were going down in order to do our job. And we knew exactly what we were getting into. We knew what we were going to be doing, but you obviously can't be on.
Until you see, you don't know.
So I want to tell you about May. Before this war broke out, our last training drill, they brought in a mental health expert, a trauma expert from Sderot. So somebody who knows a lot about trauma. And he runs the Resiliency Center, Mental Health Resiliency Center. And he talked to us about, he understands that what we do is potentially very scarring. And the question of are we okay is what we've been dealing with since day one and still dealing with it till today. And he said this, he gave us this unbelievable worksheet and workshop. And basically the point of the workshop was there are things you can do before, during, and after a traumatic event to help prevent any type of PTSD. Can't 100%, but it can help. They said the three things that you can do beforehand is you know that what you're going to do is going to be temporary. It's going to end. It's not forever. And you know that what you're about to do has purpose. There's a reason for it. So with those three things, you take a few deep breaths, you do your job, you keep that in your mind, and that will really help be able to prevent any lasting damages. So why am I telling you this? We get out of the Hummer in Kfar Aza, surrounded by potential terrorists everywhere. It's dark, surrounded by death everywhere. And we know what our job has to be. And we huddle up a team of 5 and we literally take 5 deep breaths. Like out of a movie, right? What soldiers are in that mindset because of what he said? And I said to my team, I said, this is gonna stop and we're going to get through this together.
You remembered the speech. I
remember it. It was in our heads. It was in all of our heads. I wish I have to figure out who it was and thank you. And we huddled and we breathed and we said, this is going to be terrible. And we're going to get through this and we're going to do it together. And then we spent the next 2 weeks essentially going from place to place in southern Israel. The Zaka members call it respecting the bodies, taking care of all of the people from the massacre. Our main job is soldiers under fire in war. But since October 7th, our job is fallen civilians, fallen hostages, and fallen soldiers wherever they may be. So we spent full days in Kfar Aza and in Nir Oz and in all the worst hit places. And we saw all the things that the media talks about and now people are saying are just rumors and didn't actually happen. We saw all those things. We dealt with all those things. And I don't feel traumatized by it. I feel like this was such a momentous and important and remarkable mission and period of my life. Those first few weeks.
Can there be any greater avodat kodesh? I'm not sure.
I like to say I did more mitzvot in the last 5 months than I've done in my whole life combined.
Wow. Literally, wow.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. So can you give us a little bit of a visual what it was like? Also like your day. When did you sleep? When did you eat? When did you shower? Where did you sleep? Like just give us like an insight, a glimpse into a day of Arky's first day on the field.
I definitely can. I just want to make sure that the viewers know that things can get graphic. And if you don't want me to get graphic, that's totally fine.
I think we should just give a disclaimer that it might get gory. And if you can't, maybe don't listen anymore.
Yeah. So if anybody's listening now at this part, we're going to describe imagery that might be difficult to hear. Our day starts out by sleeping on a parking lot floor in the base because there are so many soldiers called up in Israel that there aren't enough beds for all of us. So we are sleeping on the ground. Our first few missions that we did, we got in a Hummer, this open Hummer that's wind is in your face as you're driving down to the south, because we weren't staying in the south. So we had to go back and forth. As we're driving down to the south, people are honking and everybody's like, there's a real feel of love and support. I was so shocked by it because the first time that I saw people honking, as a soldier, I said to myself, are they upset at us? Are they mad at us? We just let them down, right? The army of Israel just let down the people of Israel. Maybe they see us and they're mad. And very quickly, I realized it's the exact opposite. They're honking in support. And as you're making your way down towards the south, within the first few days, really what stands out in my head is the roads. The apocalyptic scene of smoke coming up from cars in the middle of the road that have been on fire for days at a time, people's belongings in the middle of the road, strollers, car seats lying flat on the roads, and the Hummer having to do slaloms on the way down, zigzags in order to avoid running over people's property or the people themselves who were killed, who are still lying on the road. And that's like always going to be, I think, the most stuck visual is the roads. And there's drone footage of it without the bodies, but there's drone footage of it, what those roads look like. 20 minutes of driving with cars piled on the sides of the road. And very quickly, you start to realize the scale of all of it. Again, we're going down to these places without even knowing what really at this point. Still October 7th. We went down on October 7th to areas that still were controlled by Hamas. It hasn't reached the news yet. I'll tell you once.
Do they tell you to go to a specific area? Does each group get a specific, like a certain percentage? Like you need to focus on this area.
Exactly.
And you scan it through left to right and make sure you collect all the bodies.
Exactly. We're going house to house. We're going house to house and we're searching for people who would have been hiding, which meant you're not searching for people in their beds. You're searching for them in cabinets, in the fridge, and in the attic, anywhere that they could have been hiding. And so it was it felt like Badika Chametz almost, like I'm looking underneath drawers. It was very intense, obviously. And each unit gets its own area that they're in charge of. And there's some areas that we couldn't even go to because it wasn't safe yet, because there's still battles going on.
So you only went to places that they told you Hamas is not there anymore? You didn't have to be afraid that there might be a bomb or a sniper or mechabel hiding behind the house?
So yes and yes. We are only going to places that have been cleared because it's worth it for us to go to get killed in order to bring bodies of other people who are killed. We always say, "Hachaim kodmim lametim." The life is more important than the dead. There was a situation where I went into a house. There was a rocket siren in Kfar Aza, and you have 5 to 10 seconds. So I run into this house, and there's a dead terrorist there with a grenade in his hand. We don't know, is that grenade live? Is it not live? We ran out, and 30 seconds later, we heard the explosion. So there's still live explosives. Yeah, there's miracles happening. There's anti-miracles happening. So there's a lot that I took from Kfar Aza, and from those first weeks, a lot of things that I took with me, my relationship with Hashem. And I really did feel like God was with me in Kfar Aza, but I was also really pissed at her at the same time because these were good people, and these good people were without heads, and these good people were completely burnt. Many of these good people were raped. And for the longest time, I was upset at God. You were here. I felt you in Kfar Aza. I felt you down south. So aren't good people supposed to be saved? I always learned that good people get saved, right? You do the right thing, you do the good thing, and then you have a miracle, and then you get saved. And I realized within my processing that I wasn't mad at Hashem. I was mad at what I was told about Hashem. I was told all these stories of the people who got saved because they did the right thing. And that does not prepare you for the people who did the right thing and then don't get saved. It causes you to start questioning, wait, everything I know about God is wrong. No, you were taught good people always get saved, and that's not true. And it took me about 3 weeks of processing to realize that God was with me. And I was like, what did that mean? When I was dealing with what I was doing, I didn't understand a thing. There was a body there without a head. In my head, everything that happened to him after he was killed. And the woman with the underwear at her legs, I just never, my brain was shut off. God did not let me understand a thing. I needed to do the work that I needed to do and not get emotional and not start building stories and starting to cry. No, I need to do the job. And Hashem was like, that's what you're going to do. Going to understand the thing.
Do they prepare you and say, listen, you're going to see atrocities, but don't start getting emotional about it. Be very active, like a soldier, no emotion.
It's just the expectation. And if you get emotional, there are people who arrived at the scene and said, this isn't for me. I got to go. I can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
are they allowed to leave?
Yeah. We're not. A typical combat unit, if something sucks, get over it. But if something is something you handle and your mental state is not there, you're not ready to do your job and you're not capable to do your job. So don't be here. Go back to the Hummer. We don't need you. And that's okay. And
you don't need them, really?
It's always good to have manpower, but to have a person who's not mentally there, not mentally ready to do the job with the smells and the sights and the sounds and everything, you're less helpful there than you are sitting out.
So what is the process physically when you're working as a chayal and zaka on the ground? Like, how do you coexist doing this very similar job, right?
So for the most part, we never see zaka and they have nothing to do with what we do. But why? Because we're in military zones. We're in war. We're combat soldiers. We all know what to do if terrorists infiltrate. A zaka member is doing that at all. They're generally coming in after terrorist attacks and they can be at a scene for hours and hours at a time. And all they have to worry about is their job. We are heads around. We're looking around. We're making sure that we're safe. And there's always a team of a unit who's in charge of protecting us 360.
So there's patrol around you, guiding you and saying, wait, somebody's on the loose. Somebody's coming. We're getting word. Exactly. They're protecting you.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
There's no reason for us to put ourselves in too much danger in order to do our job. So we're always surrounded by soldiers who are protecting us. But for example, in Gaza, where there's tunnels that they can come out at anywhere, that doesn't guarantee anything. Your safety is on you. So you have to be aware. So that was really the first few weeks, was dealing with the civilians and dealing with fallen civilians and soldiers from the October 7th massacres. And then after that, we moved on to missions, bringing back hostages, fallen hostages and fallen soldiers in Gaza itself and in the war. Yeah.
Can I ask you a crazy question?
Please.
How many bodies did you see?
It's a good question. It's a question that most people don't have the guts to ask me. So I really appreciate that question. Probably within our team of 5, probably upwards of 100.
And what do you do with the bodies?
So the bodies are brought back to a place called Shura. I'll tell you a story. We put the bodies on a truck. Unfortunately, there were so many bodies, sometimes we had to double stack them because there wasn't room on the numbers of how many we were dealing with. It was just incomprehensible.
Separately, is there like some kind of a process of not mixing the body?
They're bagged.
A bag. So each one goes into a bag.
They're numbered and they're categorized and everything. There's a whole process. And so we put them on the truck and then we are like a convoy bringing the bodies, bunch of Hummers, trucks and more Hummers, bringing the bodies to Shura on their last way into Israel and to the body processing place. And as we're driving, again, we're getting people honking at us. They have no idea what they're driving.
Oh my God.
To, right? And it was so strange for me. Like, they're honking for me, right? Like, you're a hero. You're risking your life for us. But what they didn't realize is they think they're honking for us, but in a way, they're really honking for the truck of the fallen soldiers who are right behind us, who had just given their lives for their country. And they were trying to give us the respect and give us the glory. In a way, without knowing it, they were giving the glory to the truck that was right next to them. And just that idea of them not knowing that what was really next to them was something that was very interesting.
Did you see any live people? Did you find any people that were hiding or injured, or maybe somebody that was alive a few hours ago?
So it's really not supposed to happen. There's search and rescue units that come in and deal with live people. And it's really not our job. So for the most part, so for all the houses that we went into, it was only people that had already fallen. And then in Gaza, when we did missions in Gaza, then we're talking about live terrorists who were trying to stop us from doing what we were doing. We had a mission where we had to get 21 bodies from a cemetery that Hamas had buried suspiciously right in the same area that we knew there were hostages. And there was solid intel saying that these were potentially the bodies of hostages. And we literally went into an area that was completely surrounded by terrorists with bullets flying over our heads and expiring. And actually 2 soldiers were killed in this mission to protect us. I told you how there's this 3-6. So there were 2 soldiers that actually from Givati who died protecting us. And the entire army was waiting for this mission to hopefully get maybe some hostages back.
Bodies.
They're,
and did you?
So we got the bodies back. It was a successful mission. We brought the bodies back for DNA recovery. And we said to ourselves, the mission was an accomplishment. If it's hostages, it was an accomplishment. If it's not hostages, it's an accomplishment, meaning we did what we were supposed to do. And weeks went by and eventually it came out that it wasn't the bodies of hostages. And it was, but again, I already knew the mission was a success. We went in looking for the bodies that we had to look for, and we got them and we brought them back. And that mission was a success. That week, I went to the Shiva house of the soldier, one of the soldiers who was killed, protect us. And they asked me to speak. And I took a microphone, and in front of members of the Knesset, in front of Miriam Peretz who were there, I didn't even know this was going to happen. I gave a 5-minute speech essentially saying, your son gave his life for me to protect us. Yeah.
Wow. That's so meyuchad. I'm speechless, literally speechless. Yeah. It's hard to process like what you went through in a few months. I'm hearing this all and I'm trying to visualize like how does a human go through a day with all these emotions? Because you're also a human.
Right.
Like you need to sleep, you need to eat, you need to go to the bathroom. There's basic, you're a father, you're a husband, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that part in this whole story? Where's the husband, Arky? Where's the father, Arky, before he goes into this mission, knowing that you're going into Gaza, mamash, into the fire? What happens to Arky, like that the father and the husband and the son?
You're asking a good question. And the answer is something that I wish it wasn't the right answer, but I'm going to be fully honest, is that I had to turn that switch off. That switch had to be turned off. I went into Gaza, not as an Abba, as a husband, but as a soul. And that switch that I turned off was something that was very difficult for the people around me because I turned off that side of me. I wasn't a father and a husband. I was a soldier, and I needed that in order to do my missions and to stay sane and to be focused. And that tunnel vision and that hyper focusing is something that I do and I needed to do, but it hurt those around me because it means that I turned off who I am when I'm at home. And just because I came from Gaza physically and entered my house physically, and I'm a father again physically, and I'm a husband again physically, doesn't mean that that switch automatically gets turned on. And so we're now a month or two after I finished the army, and I'm learning to turn that switch back on. And it's not so.
I think it has to be done with so much compassion, self-compassion, and no judgment for yourself. I'm saying just for yourself.
Yeah.
It's you versus you. Forget the surrounding, but I'm saying as someone that, because there's also a lot of guilt. And is it healthy guilt versus I did the best I could?
Yeah.
And maybe there is no preparation and there's no guidance because the human part of us shouldn't be prepared for this.
Yeah. And I think
because you can't.
A lot of soldiers going through this. I don't think that because I dealt with the things I dealt with, it's specifically difficult for me. I think that every soldier that went into Gaza, that was 100% what was on his mind, was his mission and what he needs to do. And like you were saying, where am I going to the bathroom? When am I eating? Where am I sleeping? What's my mission? Am I ready? Is my gear ready? There's so many things on your mind. That's what takes your time. And I wish I could say that I was in Gaza thinking about, are my kids okay? And how's my wife doing? But I couldn't hold space for that and for what I needed to do.
I didn't watch, what is that series that came out a few years ago about the Shabak? What's it called? Fauda.
Fauda, yeah.
Right? I didn't watch it, but I think someone told me that there's a scene there that they go in on a mission and they see a boy, a little child, an Arab child. I'm not sure if it's for Fauda or something that really happened, but I think it was Fauda.
Yeah.
And they see a little, oh, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. This is what it was. My son told me that he heard a podcast about the Navy SEAL that took out Saddam Hussein, I think it was.
Okay.
Maybe Saddam Hussein, one of them.
Okay.
And he comes into the house and they say, we found, let's say it was Saddam Hussein. And then they see a little boy. And one soldier tells the other soldier, you can't see the boy now. We have a mission. Don't ignite that humanity of seeing that little kid because we have a mission. And he's frozen in fear of what there's a little child here coming out and crying. He's 2 and 3 years old. And they train them and the Navy SEAL how to shut that part down of not seeing that little boy. And he said he couldn't because he was a father. He had to grab that boy and then continue the mission and put him somewhere in the house, whatever it was.
Right.
But it was that quick. But that other friend saying, don't see the boy, see the mission. And what you're describing is that we have to right now have tunnel vision because we need to be focused on the mission, because if we let the human regesh, the emotion come into place, we might lose focus.
Agree, but there's also part of the human emotion that's involved in the mission. And when you talk about like civilian and children, these are things that we deal with also on the battlefield. And if you lose that humanity, then you do things that are inhumane. And that's not what I saw from the soldiers. I saw absolute error. And I'm not just saying that because this is public. We had a mission where they told us they're shooting at you from this side, you can shoot back. But if they're shooting at you from this side, you can't shoot because there's civilians over there.
Right.
Meaning they're literally trying to take your life and you can't do anything because you might hurt the other side. And so the humanity is still there, but there's...
And I think that's so important.
Yes. But you have to take out the irrelevant humanity, the things that you're...
Nice.
Time. I'll tell you another story. Every single time I came home, on my way in the morning, I left at around 10 o'clock. I got dressed at 8 o'clock. And my wife noticed every time you get dressed in your uniform on your way out at 8 o'clock, you're gone. Your head is not here.
You're a soldier already.
You're
as soon as you're a soldier.
I'm here. I'm in my house having a coffee with my wife, but
Tafkid.
I'm there.
That's it.
I'm there. So that's the part of the humanity that you're blocking out. It's that rest of your life that doesn't matter right. Can't matter right. But the humanity of what you're seeing in front of you, that's why I'm not sure I love your mashal of the boy, because the boy is part of that mission that you are ultra focusing on.
What he was saying, and maybe I'll put the clip for the Navy SEAL. He said, I can't lose focus. I need to act quickly on this little boy and not let myself break down, not kill the boy. Let the emotion take over me that there's this little boy that I might be killing his father now because he's Saddam Hussein.
Right.
But protect the boy, but at the same time, do the mission, right?
Sure.
Which they need to coexist, and it's on a split second.
Yeah.
And he said, don't let that part stop you from the mission because the helicopter's over there. We need to go, act fast.
Yeah.
I think that was the musar from this, how to not break down from the little boy, but continue the mission while doing the right thing. And I think the world doesn't understand how much the IDF is so focused on doing the right thing.
It's totally.
Focused.
And so for Kfar Aza, for example, that's exactly what we're talking about, which is you have a job to do. These bodies need to come back to a Jewish burial. It's not the time right now to think about who these people were, how they died, why the scene looks like it is. It's the time to literally scan the field to see if you can find this guy's head. And that's all that matters, right? You know what I mean? And that is blocking out those emotions so that you can get the job done.
Can I say something that I just realized?
Yeah.
And now I understand why you did this is going to be beautiful. This is beautiful.
I'm excited.
Okay. I'm very analytic, and I realized that what you're saying is now, lachol zman va'et. And ask yourself at this moment, what will help more? And your Instagram stories were saying, what do we need at this moment? Will this help for the long term or will not? And the same thing, what you did on the mission. What do I need at this moment? Yes, I'm a father. Yes, I'm a husband. But at this moment, what do I need to focus on?
Beautiful.
So you did the same thing, la klal v'la prat. It's not easy. So you're saying, you, Am Yisrael, you turned yourself off. That's not your job. That's my job on the field. You turn on the volume because I turned myself off. So you put it up for the world, for the energy. Exactly. Because the kol zman vayed v'kol tafkid v'kol ben adam. And you had that clarity without even knowing that you did that on the field and on Instagram for everyone else.
That's a really true insight. And I guess I try to do that every time, in every moment. It's like what's needed right now.
Nachon. And it doesn't mean that it's easy to choose.
No, it's not. But you can't have two people with the volume down. You know what I mean? You need that balance. And
leaning on, like you were leaning on your wife at the time to take care of the children.
I needed that. And so now I'm bringing that into my next stage in life, which is what does Arky need right now? I'm finished chapter 1 of my Army service, and I'm fully aware that chapter 2 of my reserves can be tonight, can be right now. And I carry my phone on Shabbat because who knows? But that's chapter 1. And I'm hoping, please God, chapter 2 waits for a couple months to take that question of what do people need right now and to bring that to America and to schools and to schools and say, here's what I think we need right now. Let's do this together. And so that's what I'm bringing. I'm not coming just to tell some stories, war stories. Here's how Hashem saved me. That's all nice and games. But I'm coming to say kind of what you're talking about right now, which is like, what can we do now? What should we be doing? What is needed right now? What do I need right now? So what I haven't really talked about is that this speaking tour, please God, that I'll be doing, how much it's not just for the people who are listening, but it's also for me to give purpose and to give meaning and to give positivity to the experiences that I went. And please God, I'll be challenging people to continue missions of better yourself and make sure that you're physically strong because you never know when you're going to need it. And make sure that you're mentally as the best place that you can be and take time off for yourself because you don't know when your October 7th mission of Miluim, of your call up to your personal reserves is going to be. And I want you to be more ready than I will. You know what I mean?
And can we be ready?
I think that you can work on yourself now. I'll give you an example. A year and a half ago, my wife looks at me and goes, maybe it'd be a good idea to start exercising more regularly. And I said, that is a good idea. I'd have said it nicer, but in my head, she was saying, Arky, you're fat. Go work out. I know that's what I heard. I started doing CrossFit. I started doing serious exercise 3 times a week. And I remember lifting the stretchers of the bodies that we're holding. And the people who I was with, the other soldiers, were struggling with it. And I remember thinking, thank God, a year and a half ago, I started exercising or else I wouldn't be able to do this over and over again. I would have had to sit it out. And what would that have done to me? How would I have felt about myself? I would say, I wasn't ready. How could I have not been ready? That's just one example of something that I was ready for. There's plenty of things that I wasn't ready for. I wish I would have started therapy before the war and not during the war. I wish I would have come in with the tools that I am now learning from therapy and breath work and breathing that I'm doing and working on myself. If I had been doing that the last 2 years, it would have been a different war for me.
More resilient, you're saying.
Exactly. So there are things that I wish I would have done beforehand that I learned the hard way. And there were things that I thank God and my wife that I did take upon myself beforehand. And because of those things, I'm ready. And my missions to the people who are going to be listening to my speeches are be as ready as you possibly can and start that work now because you never know when that moment when you're going to need to lift your grandchild up, you're going to want to be physical. And when you go through something traumatic, which we all have in life, you're going to want to be ready. Some examples. You're going to want to feel Hashem with you when you need him the most. That starts now, that work. It doesn't start when you get called up. That work starts today. And so that's what I see as the need right now.
What's your relationship with Hashem now?
I wasn't davening easily. It took me a few weeks, and now it's closer than it was before. Closer, because I realized you don't get angry at somebody you don't care about. If I didn't care about my relationship with Hashem, and if I didn't feel him so closely in those moments, I wouldn't have felt angry that he didn't create that nace. And I just would have been like, okay, he doesn't exist, so what do I care? That wasn't the feeling. Where was God? I guess he wasn't there. No, it was, I felt God with me. I know he's close to me. I am very much feel him in those moments, but also, what the heck? Where were the miracles? Why didn't you save these people? So I'm now in a point in my life where I'm realizing that this anger and these questions come from a place of closeness and not from a place of distance.
They say the closest person to you hurts you the most because you expect more out of them.
Exactly.
Like somebody can insult you that you don't care, you don't care about them. And then somebody, your spouse, your child, your parent says the same words and you're like devastated, you're heartbroken. And wait, I expected more. How could this be?
I don't know if this is kfira, but you're right. I was disappointed in Hashem.
Yeah.
Disappointed that those miracle stories that I grew up on didn't save the people that I had to do.
Even though your grandfather was in the Holocaust and you know what atrocities can happen, and we learned them our whole life, and there were no answers then, right?
Yeah.
But we, for some reason, think it's not going to happen to us in our days. We're not going to see it. That was the Holocaust. That was then.
And even in the Holocaust, you grow up hearing those stories of the people who, because they did the right thing, were saved.
Did you really grow up hearing that?
I think so. I think in the world that I grew up in, the religious world I grew up in, wasn't stated, but there's all these stories of the guy who, I'll give you a perfect example. The September 11th stories of all the people who went to Slichot that morning. And because they went to Slichot that morning, they weren't in the towers when they fell. If that's going to be something that's going to inspire you to go to Slichot and be a better person, then it's great to use it. That's not going to prepare you for the day when the towers do fall on the person who is good. Do you know what I mean?
100%, 100%. And one of my hardest, I would say, combat with Emunah, or the way we were taught Emunah, especially with October 7th, they were highlighting all the Yeshuvim that didn't get hurt because they were Shomer Shabbat. But what about the Mefaked Plugah that was giving a Daf Yomi Shir and woke up every day at 5 a.m. to go learn and daven and do everything right, and he died?
I'll take it even a step further. What about the Chiloni who didn't keep Shabbat, but was a great person and helped?
100%.
Like, we don't get to say those people died because these people were saved because they did X, Y, Z. And there's for every miracle story, and there were miracles on October 7th. That's also a part of this. Plenty of people were saved by Nisim. Hashem had amazing Nisim, including myself. You heard the granite, right? There were Nisim, but for every nace, there's also a story of there wasn't a nace, right? For the person who did deserve the nace. He could have been Shomer Shabbat, he could have been Chiloni, he could have been this, he could have been that. Doesn't matter. Hashem did not, we don't to decide this is why Hashem took those and not those. And it almost makes me vomit when I hear these stories of the Shomer Shabbos kibbutz was saved. How many people who were Shomer Shabbos from Ofakim were killed? It doesn't work like that. It didn't work like that in Meron when people were killed in Lag BaOmer. It doesn't work like that.
Or the piguim on the Erev Shabbat, the little kid that was going to,
right.
It's just so heart-wrenching to hear. But I think it's the human, you know what? I have a hard time with us making a beautiful story because life is not beautiful. Life is full of questions and full of the complexity of the intimacy with God because it's complex.
Yeah.
And what I would hope we gain from it is not highlight why people were saved, but say, how can we do better? And what can we do for the future? What can we learn from this for ourselves with each one individually with Hashem?
Right.
Versus this is what we should do in order to save in the future.
Yeah. And I was in too many places with disasters to good people to say that this happened because of X or this happened because of Y. And it's not our place. It's not our place. And it says that in the Torah. We even talk about that, how Hashem Machshavot, they're not our machshavot. They're not. And to try and be on the same wavelength of Hashem, which is explaining his ways, is hevel hevelim, pointless. And I think it's also disrespectful. It's disrespect to all the people who weren't saved. And it doesn't prepare us properly for when disaster strikes in. All going to have something hard. We're all going to lose somebody at some point who didn't deserve it. And we have to be ready for those days. And the stories of all the stories that we shove down our kids' throat of all the people who did good things and therefore survived doesn't build them with a strong enough base. And I think we were talking about this with the army. It's all about building that strong base. And if your emunah falls, it's because the base wasn't there. And it took me a few weeks to realize that it wasn't my problem with Hashem. It was my problem with the base that I built.
The education that I got. Yeah. I was just talking to a woman that was sharing with me her story with her husband's recovery from addiction, from sex addiction. And she's very Orthodox. And she says, I realized that I'm not angry at Hashem. She said, for a while I was angry. I was such a good girl. I did everything right. I didn't even know there was such a thing as sex addiction. And then I find out that my husband cheated on me and for so many years. And she said, I was angry at the way they taught me emunah. Do good and good will happen to you. And then I'm questioning, what am I teaching my children? And what does good mean? And how do you show up? Is it, you do an avera so you get punishment? Or do you do good because that's what you're supposed to do with regardless of the reward?
Right.
And she said she has such a hard time trusting anything that has to do with how you teach emunah because she was disappointed. She's like, wait, how did that serve me?
Yeah.
And I think the emunah is a self-discovery.
For sure. And these are things that I'm working on, that I feel like I've made my breakthrough of realizing it about my relationship with Hashem, about that education, and that helped me break through to the other side. Okay, I feel more close to Hashem now than I did before.
Beautiful. How do you want to teach emunah to your children?
Ooh, good one. Me a little bit. I would say it's the day-to-day things. It's the little thing. One thing, for example, and I know you'll love this, is the end of our night, the last thing we do before we go to sleep after Shema is thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, and each one has to say one thing that they thank Hashem for the day. And my 3-year-old says the silliest thing, and he doesn't even know what he's talking about, but he is getting himself used to saying, thank you, Hashem, for the good things that happened today. And if I'm going to really walk the walk, I'm also going to say, thank you, Hashem, for the hard things that happened today.
Yeah, beautiful. And giving them permission maybe I'm talking for myself. I had such a hard time with Beis Yaakov of being afraid of God. And I lost the intimacy with God when I had to rediscover God. I fell in love with God, but it looked like a very different God that I heard about in Beis Yaakov.
Right.
And I want them to find their own relationship. Don't go in my relationship with God. Find your own passion with God.
Yeah.
Build it on your own with your challenges, because my challenges and your challenges are different.
Right.
So embrace it and trust yourself that you can, and give yourself the chance to mess up and find your intimacy with God.
I think for us with the kids, it's all about just reminding them that presence is there. So if you're having a hard day, or if you can find something, you can ask Hashem to help you with that. You know what I mean? And if you're having a great day, you can say, Hashem, thank you for having that day. So there's that constant awareness. And I'm saying this as a goal in any way where we are right now, but as a goal, which is there's an awareness that the good and the bad, Hashem is here. It's here.
Right.
Me. And the bad and the hard times and it can help with anxiety, and it can help with fear, and it can help with stressful situations. He's there. Just know that. And
have an open dialogue.
I think and that's one of the points I want to bring out in my speech is this idea of like, you can talk to Hashem. It doesn't have to be in shul, and it doesn't have to be with spilling on or at candle lighting, but Hashem. You speak to him in your language, which is a real chidush, I think, for a lot of Americans. You can speak God in English? Really?
Right.
That's all to be in Hebrew, and Tefillah is written in a book.
Right. Or even with tears.
Yeah.
I think I wrote a poem once. Prayer is the silence of the broken heart. That just sitting with the broken heart is a prayer itself.
Yeah.
And God hears us through the brokenness, the messiness. Because I think David HaMelech wrote it through a broken heart, the Tehillim through a broken heart.
Right.
Really, we can sit and...
At the Hashem, like I'm calling you
Right.
out for you from the hardest and lowest places.
Yeah. Yeah. Arky, thank you so much. When are you guys planning to come to America? Tell us a little bit about that.
Is scheduled for May. There will be shuls across the East Coast and schools across the East Coast. We'll be in Florida, in Miami, in Hollywood, and in Boca, be in Silver Spring and in Baltimore. And then we're going to be in the New Jersey, New York area every single day. I have speaking arrangements with school and with shuls, and hopefully continuing to answer that question of what can I give Am Yisrael right now? What can they do? What can they do for us? And what can I do for them? And so there aren't many more things to book. Thank God. I got booked up really quickly.
Really?
Yeah, because Instagram fame and just getting famous. So I put out a few videos and have my amazing cousin, Shira Staiman. Shout out to her. She's working on my bookings and doing that end part of it. Negotiations, and there are still arrangements to be made, maybe a Shabbos here or there that I could speak in shuls, but a lot of it is booked. And just here's out, if you're in one of those communities, if you hear that I'm coming to your shul, I would love for you guys to come out and hear, and we can connect and you can ask questions and just continue this amazing dialogue.
Beautiful. Thank you. We're going to put in the show notes a link to your Instagram account and your cousin Shira's email, or your email. Who should we put in if there's any inquiries?
What? Okay. Yeah, we can put in Shira's email. Only thing is I have 2 slots left. So I don't know getting emails, but you know what? Let's put it out there.
And we never know. We never know. Maybe by the time this published, it will be already all, but maybe for the future, maybe we never know. So we'll put it out there. Thank you very much. And you're going to be coming with your wife and children.
Truth is, even more important is maybe even just leave a link for my website for tour guiding. We didn't really get into it so much.
So tell us now. Okay. Tell us for a few minutes. Tell me. I want to hear.
So this love and passion for Israel from these Israel trips that I fell in love with Israel and had these awesome tour guides. And similar to what we were talking about before, which is like, what is my tafkid? What do I bring to the table? I fell in love with Israel through amazing tour guides. So I got into it myself. And now my passion is to bring sparks, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, gives mostly kids and families. And people fall in love with Israel through fun and interactive and games and all kinds, and dress up and skits.
Wow.
And we really bring out the beauty of Israel in fun. It's education that you're having so much fun. You don't even know that you're learning. Yeah. That's what I'm doing now. And I love it. And I know that there's a work going on in Israel, but you're coming when you're coming. I'd be happy to make it unforgettable for you, as my shoot says. I don't know. Well, probably all backwards. And
so you're doing it nowadays? Like you could still take people around Israel?
I did a tour today to a couple from Brooklyn, from Borough Park, and we went all around my area of Toccoa and saw the massive gorges and the new settlements that have been built since the war and ancient palaces. Cool stuff. It's really cool.
Saying, come back to Israel. Come back to Israel.
People are asking, how can I support? How can I give?
This is how.
Come
back, let Arky show you around, fall in love with Israel, and give to the local businesses. That's how we can support.
Yeah.
Because we need to rebuild Israel.
Tourism
after the
for
last
2 years was shot. We were
because of COVID.
recovering because of COVID. We're just recovering.
Right.
Tour guides are just recovering. Hotels are just recovering. Mm-hmm. These places that rely on tourism are just recovering, and it feels safe in Israel. It really does. Now, I'm not guaranteeing anything. Who knows what tomorrow will be, but it feels safe. Touring feels safe. Ask anybody who's been here. The country is, other than the signs and the support and the unity, feels like pre-war Israel when it comes to touring.
Okay, that's so good to know. And we're going to put your information down there.
Amazing.
Arky, I always ask this final question. If there's anyone in the history from Adam and Eve till now that you would want to meet, who would that be? And what question would you ask them?
I feel like this question has changed. I've been asked this question before, and my head is going to the answer that I would have given the last time somebody asked me that, but I'm such...
So what was that? Wait, I want to hear both.
Okay. I'll answer what 10 years ago Arky would have answered. And really, it's actually Rashi. He sounds very...
Really?
Yeah. I want to ask him, why not just write a simple Perush based on the Pshat? Why not have people learn the Torah as the words are, as opposed to giving stories and midrashim and all these things. So that would be my question back then. It's not at all in my head anymore.
I like that. I like that question a lot.
Yeah. Now, so hard. I think there's people who I knew and never asked the questions I wanted to ask, and now are no longer here. So I would say like grandparents who I did speak to, but I wasn't the place that I am now. So I would have probably picked my Zadie, the one who went through Auschwitz. And he didn't discuss it. He didn't discuss World War II at all. So if I could ask him one thing, it's tell me about that. Tell me what that was like.
You relate to him not discussing after what you saw?
I'm a very open person, very open. And I'm open to discussing anything with anybody, unless I think it's bad for them, right? So for this speaking tour, I don't want to get the gory details because I don't think that's what people need. You know what I mean? I don't think that we need, I have that and I'm willing to share it and it doesn't bother me, but I don't think we need. So for my grandfather, if he felt like it was bad for me and that's why he didn't say it, then I can understand. I can understand either way, but then I can relate to that. But that wasn't what it was. I think for him, it haunted him.
And the mental health support that you're getting now and the awareness.
And he didn't go through what I went through. He went through something for indescribable for years and apples and oranges, right? Obvious.
Right.
And for me, it's very much like he couldn't bring it up for himself. He couldn't do it. And for me, bringing it up actually is healing. So I'm doing lots of podcasts and lots of talks and I love talking about it. But unless I think bad for the person who I'm talking to.
It's such a beautiful way of putting it. Again, you're so good at saying, okay, what do we need? It's not all or nothing. We have to really analyze it properly. And you're really good at that. And I feel like you have this internal intuition that most people have to break it through or be taught, but it comes to you so naturally. And it's a gift. Maybe it's the gift of the ADHD of Arky.
I would definitely agree that I like to call it my superpower. ADHD is my superpower.
That's beautiful, totally. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Arky, thank you for spreading such light, such optimism within the darkness and being that spark that gives us permission to celebrate life. Really gives me permission. I know that Arky gives me permission to celebrate life. At the same time, remember and never forget.
Thank you for having me.
It was such a kavod, bemet kavod. And thank you for the work that you did in the army, for all these fallen people, for the kedusha for them. Bemet toda.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Understand. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please hit that follow button on your favorite podcast app. This way you don't miss an episode and you help us grow. You are part of our growth. We appreciate your support and we hope you choose to listen to us on our next episode. We'd love to hear from our audience. If there's anything you would like us to research, to talk about, please contact us on our website, listeningtounderstand.com. And if there's any insight that you got from this and you want to share with others and you are happy for us to read it out loud on our show, send us your insights. Send us your thoughts. We want to listen to understand. Bye till next time.